Today we're talking about 9 books that are on my must-read list for youth pastors. And if you're not much of a reader, make sure you check out our show notes for a link to Audible. That's what we're talking about today on the Ministry Coach Podcast.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Ministry Coach Podcast. My name is Jeff Lascola, and I'm here with my favorite person in the whole wide world.
Oh,
it's you.
You're so sweet.
Thank you.
I thought you were talking about yourself.
Yeah, well, second
and I'm
favorite.
Here too.
It's 1A, 1B. It's like really close. Today, we're going to be talking about the top books that you need to own and read if you're
when and if you're a youth pastor.
Yeah, that.
Okay, should we dive in?
Yeah.
So, okay, can we just clear the air that the Bible is not going to be on this list? I'm not the person who's going to be like, the Bible, that's all you need. Okay.
Well, it also kind of goes without saying. And
exactly.
So we'll just say, number 1, the Bible. Got
Okay.
it. Everybody knows
Satisfied.
it. Everybody should have that. Moving on.
Right. And that's why. Okay. So I started with Doug Field's Purpose-Driven Youth Ministry. And it is, of course, a classic and everybody knows about it. It's been around forever. I think it got a little
revision.
Yeah, because it is so good. But it was written so long ago. I think some things obviously have changed since then, but I think it got a revision. But that one, it's still on my bookshelf and I love it. And then I'm going to pair with that one because I do middle school ministry. Kurt Johnston, also from Saddleback, did Controlled Chaos. And that was a book specifically made for middle school pastors. And those 2 books were really foundational in kind of getting my brain in the youth ministry space of like, all right, this is what I do. This is kind of the toolbox to build some framework on the walls. Okay. So those 2 to start with.
Number 3 is Jesus-Centered Youth Ministry by Rick Lawrence.
Okay. I had to put this high on my list because I remember reading it and telling my staff, I wish I had read this year 1. And I only read this book probably 4 years ago. And I remember thinking where has this book been? So basically the whole gist that Rick Lawrence is making, the whole big point, that golden thread that goes through the whole book is every single time you teach, you should be making a beeline to the gospel. So teaching without the gospel is useless, but he does it in a very strategic way and gives some teaching samples and teaching direction of how, no matter what we're talking about with students, how the gospel, the spirit of the gospel, the direction of the gospel is always central. And it just blew my mind and changed my teaching forever. And I always have that phrase in my mind. Does this make a direct connect to the gospel in some way, shape, or form? And that was huge. And especially for youth pastors, because we teach all the time. And if we're not teaching the gospel, what are we teaching, right?
Number 4 is 200 Pomegranates in an Audience of One by Sean Wood. Not Sean White.
He is a snowboarder. Sean Wood is an author. The 2 occupy the same cube in my brain, and I just pull out Sean names, and that's what came out. But anyways, so I picked this book up at a conference a million years ago. Why? Because the title grabbed me, to be quite honest. I'm like, what the heck? 200 pomegranates? That sounds interesting. I like pomegranates. Tell me more. And let me tell you, it's a short, super easy read, but the story is profound. And I have gone back to this so many times in my leadership. And if you listen to our last episode, you know a little bit about it. But the reason why is because this is that constant recalibration of, why do I do what I do? Who do I ultimately work for? Who is my job supposed to please? What is this an offering of, and who is it to? And it just it's such a profound story. Even our senior pastor, Chris Brown, he heard of it because I brought it home from this conference, and he's even used it in sermons and devos and stuff, because the story of this temple builder and his best work being up high where only God could see it. I don't want to spoil the whole thing, but it's just such a cool aha moment of like, yes, keep my perspective of who I work for. And I think that's been super tied to the longevity in my ministry. And that was what we talked about last episode. So we can move on from that, but pick it up. It is so good.
Thanks, Sean Wood. Sean White.
Thank you too.
Thank you too. All right.
For different reasons.
Okay. Number 5, Lead Like a Shepherd by Larry Osborne.
Hey, Larry. You're my fave. No. So this is an unbiased opinion. Yes, I work for him. Okay. Let's just make that clear. He is not paying me to do this. I think he knows who I am. Just kidding. So Larry Osborne, senior pastor of the church I work at, he writes a lot of books, and I read all of them. So I would recommend all of them. He's one of my favorite authors. Brilliant. Oh my gosh. Everyone knows how I feel about Larry. Right. Guy, here's what he does. Let's take a huge concept that's theologically complex. I mean, he has all the letters after his name. He's very smart. But then what he's going to do, true sign of genius, he boils it down to this little bite-size nugget.
Yeah.
And it's like, all of a sudden you're like, I get it. Because you said it the way you said it. You didn't need to go on like a half hour, like, in the, Old Testament. It's like, no, he just says it and you're like, I get it. Like, you're so good at what you do.
Yeah.
So he wrote a book that I think is very appropriate for what we do called Lead Like a Shepherd. And he goes through and talks about biblical leadership, like on a pretty large scale, like how to lead the way that Jesus did. And I was a little bit fooled by the title because I just thought it was going to be very like soft, I guess you could say. And there was so much meat in there that I actually told our campus pastor, like, hey, can we get our entire staff at the Fallbrook campus to read this book and discuss it at our staff meetings, because it is just so good. And the way that he writes, it's a very easy read. It's very relevant to what we do. And it's put in language to where you're like, yeah, like that is what happens, or that is what I think, or it's like he's in your head, and it's brilliant. But if you want like to just go off his library and read all, like, he has a book called Thriving in Babylon, Accidental Pharisees. Those are probably such a close second. I wanted to include them in this list, but I'm like, if I had to pick one Larry Osborne book for this episode, it would be that. But Lead Like a Shepherd, number 1, Thriving in Babylon, and Accidental Pharisee, super close second.
Number 6 is An Unhurried Life by Alan Fadling.
Alan Fadling.
I think I'm saying that last name correctly.
It sounds like a miniature fad.
Just a fadling, just a tiny one. Something that's here and gone in like a day.
I thought skinny jeans were going to be a fadling, but they're not.
Capris for guys. That
always
was a
ask me that.
That was the definition. That's the definition of a fadling, because that was here in like a day and gone.
I want that to be in the Urban Dictionary.
Okay, fadling it is. But An Unhurried Life by Alan Fadling.
Okay, so we interviewed Jeff Moores a while ago. From Rhythm Church. And I remember him posting a long time ago on his social media, hey, pastor friends, if you haven't read this book yet, read it. It's awesome. And I was like, I trust you, Jeff Moores. I'll take your recommendation. So I downloaded it to my Kindle and I read it every night as I would fall asleep. And it was seriously a godsend, because what Alan does in this book is like really takes a deep dive into the rhythm of work and rest as portrayed by Jesus in the Gospels. Like, he takes it directly from Jesus's life and then puts it in our context of, are we modeling our life rhythms after Jesus? Because much like yourself, I am a go, 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 firing on all cylinders, gears in my head turning constantly. And it just got to this point where I was feeling anxious all the time, and I had to be productive all the time, and I had to be doing something all the time. And I still struggle with that. This book did not like set me free and heal me.
So check it out.
But what it did do is, this is a book I'm probably going to have to go back to over and over and over again to readjust my rhythm in life, because we run so hard and we run so fast, and our priorities get a little mixed up. And I think our perspective of ourselves gets a little mixed up in that really fast pace. And so Alan Fadling just dials it back of like, what is important, and you need to slow down. And he actually teaches you how to be more productive, but with a more healthy rhythm. It's so good. It was one of the best books I read for my personal spiritual health in my ministry. So pick it up.
Number 7, The Blue Parakeet by Scot McKnight.
Oh, big fan. This changed my life too. See, that's why that was the bar. Like, it had to change my life in some way. So Scot McKnight, I actually read about this book in another book. The author had mentioned this book changing her life. And I'm like, So I picked it up and I'm like, I totally see what you mean. So I love this book for 2 reasons. Number 1, Scot McKnight is a theology professor, and I follow him on Twitter. He's brilliant. He has all kinds of cool stuff that you can glean from, but he helps you to understand how to read the Bible as a story. And the way that he kind of coaches you through that process totally changed my perspective on needing real context to be a very good Bible teacher, because like taking verses and just picking them out of just whatever book, whatever chapter, and let's put this on a coffee mug. Doesn't this sound great? And he's like, wait a minute, because that verse is part of like the biblical vascular system that is all intertwined and nothing is separate. And so you can't take these little nuts and bolts out without destroying the structure. You need the full story. And I was like, oh my gosh, yes. And one part he really focuses on later on in the book, this is not what the whole book is about, is the whole debate on women in ministry, which was so refreshing to have it written by a man, because it's like, oh, wow. Like, he really dives in and says his view on women in ministry, where he gets it from, and how important that discipline of reading the Bible as a story and in its context really comes into play with that particular issue. And so hats off to Scot McKnight. The ladies love you
for
your genius brain.
Number 8, Preaching by Timothy Keller.
Okay, I have to admit, this is one I listened to on Audible. I did not read it, and I kind of wish I had actually read it, because it was heavy to take in that way. But if you are, I have some friends that are diehard Timothy Keller fans, and so if you like Timothy Keller, you will love this. What I loved about it is he really helps you to see your preaching from the congregation's perspective, from your audience's perspective, whatever you're going to call them, from your students' perspective, to see the different types of people you're talking to and how they hear things, and how to put the gospel in the context of the ears that are listening. And that, maybe that sounds weird. Like, not saying like change the gospel to fit the culture. No. It's like, here's what people hear and here's how we meet them where they're at so they can digest the gospel. And it's a big, you really got to think book. So I would take that one slow, but very, very good for all of you who are regular teachers.
Number 9 is Gender Roles and the People of God by Alice Mathews.
I'm a big fan of this one.
You're a monkey too.
Monkeys love to read. Everyone knows that. Okay, so this one, oh my gosh. Like, my head exploded when I read this. And then I took a lot. So Alice Mathews is a theologian. She, like, obviously you can tell by the title, dives into this whole, like, what was God's purpose for women originally. And then she, like, takes us through all these different women in the Bible, and then Jesus's response and how God, it's just like, whoa, like, goes all the way back. Like, she gets, like, all the way down to the Hebrew and what this word meant. And my head exploded. But the whole time I read it, it was like my heart was beating like really fast, because it was just so exciting that it's like, there were so many things in there where I was like, I knew it, you know, it was just like, and I actually took a lot of her points and I turned it into like a message, you know, that I preached. And I had women coming up to me after, like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, you know, and it was like, Alice, this is incredible. Why have I not heard of you before now? So anyways, and if you're a male pastor who's still kind of like, or even a female pastor, I didn't even know how I felt about all this stuff for a really long time, and you're kind of wanting to more understand the gender role thing on like a theological issue, Blue Parakeet coupled with gender roles in the people of God will forever change the way I see the scriptures on this stuff. And one's a man and one's a woman, and they both bring this amazing perspective that gave me so much confidence on a theological level to be able to move forward with what God had for me. And that will help you if you're a woman, but also if you're a man, to help women realize who God made them to be and silence maybe some of the opinions that there's a lot of opinions on this, but like to know deep down, like what is rooted in scripture and be able to come from a place of truth, not just like debate, you know? And so it's like, I just have to get, no matter what this person thinks, I just have to know, God, what do you say about this?
Right.
And then taking a deep dive into Scot McKnight and Alice Mathews, I finally feel like that little rattle in the back of my head for so long just went, shh, you're good. I'm like, feels good to be good. You know what I mean? So those books are a huge gift.
All right, well, there you have it. That is Kristen's top 9 books that you should be reading if you're a youth pastor.
A weird amount of books to have on a list. But you want to know what? You probably don't even know this about me, Jeff. You thought you knew everything. 9 is my favorite number. It's a weird favorite number.
So random.
It goes back to Sesame Street when I was little. It's kind of a long story, but they like made the 9 so cute, and they were all characters. And I'm like, that 9 is just so cute. I love 9 ever since then.
I made the decision to love 9 on that day. If you guys have any books that you would recommend, please post them in the comments on YouTube.
Jeff can't wait to read them. Yeah. What he's done with the White Wolf Mountain.
It's the I'm going to put it in the show notes. It's a trilogy.
We don't read fiction. We don't have time.
No, it's not a trilogy. It's a quadrilogy, if that's a thing.
Nerd.
White Mountains. Check it out. It's about tripods, aliens coming to Earth, brainwashing, stuff like that.
I hate aliens.
Super 2020, even though it was written like in the 50s.
This is not your show.
All right.
Stop.
Well, thank you guys for listening, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for checking out this episode. We hope that it provided a ton of insight for you to create health in yourself, your ministry, and your church.
And if you haven't already done so, please subscribe to the Ministry Coach podcast wherever you're watching or listening. And it would mean so much to us if you would rate and review this show on Apple Podcasts.
And we'd also encourage you to share it with a friend so that it can go to help more people. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.